Hey, it's the beginning of cake decorating time, and today we are going to make a cake from scratch. I have a very lovely assistant here with me today. This is my daughter Emily, and we're actually going to make her birthday cake because it's her birthday tomorrow. So she chose a recipe. I posted it on Schoology for you. It's for a raspberry lemon cake. So if you want to try it at home, you certainly can. By all means, you don't have to. We're just getting fancy because it's a birthday. Next week, I'm going to bake you another cake that you'll get to watch in a video. So I'll show you another kind of cake that you could do as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I've done a little Food Network style and pre-measured everything that we have here. And Emily's going to help me out a little bit. So if you remember from our, the article that you guys read, it talked a lot about the first step is making sure that your butter and your sugar are creamed together really well. So that's where we're going to start because we already have our oven going. I've got my two 9-inch cake pans here that we'll spray right before we put the batter in them. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, do you want to put the butter into the mixing bowl? Okay, so we're going to put the butter in there. And we're going to put in 1 cup of granulated sugar, also known as white sugar.
Is that okay?
That's fine. Your hands are clean, right?
No. Just kidding.
She's lying. They're clean. All right, so it says 9 tablespoons. So if you remember, 1 stick of butter is 8 tablespoons. So we are using 1 full stick plus 1 extra tablespoon. Boom. Our butter's been sitting out for a while because it needs to be at room temperature in order for us to be able to get it to cream well, okay? And if you remember, we talked about creaming when we were doing things with our cookies, all right? So I have my sugar measured. I'm gonna go ahead and stick my sugar in with the butter. Are you wanting me to mix or do you want to?
You can mix.
Okay, I'm gonna mix it. I'm gonna just use my hand mixer for this, and we're gonna cream that sugar. So think about how long the article said that we need to do that for. So I'm gonna put it kind of like on medium to high speed, and we want to get it nice and light and a pale yellow color, and it should be kind of fluffy. All right, so here is what it looks like. It should be a pale yellow color. You can see it, it's fluffy. We mixed it for a good 2 or 3 minutes. So I would say we have our butter and sugar creamed pretty well, okay? And then now what we're going to do is we're gonna separate our eggs. Do you wanna separate eggs?
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna take and we're gonna put the yolks in here one at a time. Okay. I'm going to keep the whites in this bowl. I'm going to do the yolks in this bowl, one at a time. And I'll beat them in the one at a time. Yeah.
I know.
Okay. She's good. Perfect. You can put the shell back in there if you want. All right, I'm going to beat those in, again, one at a time. Okay, here it is again, so you can see what that mixture should look like. Notice it got it to be a brighter yellow. Obviously, we beat in the yellow part of the egg.
Do we dump it in?
Not yet. So, if we look at the next direction, beat the egg yolks in one at a time, and then we're going to, in a separate bowl, beat the egg whites until we get a soft peak. So do you want to pour that in there? I'm just going to quick rinse off the beaters. One of the things if you're trying to get peaks in your eggs is that you got to make sure you get rid of the fat. So that's why I was cleaning off my beaters here. I'm just going to kind of dry them a little smidge. Make sure we get most of that butter off there, so it's good. All right, now we're going to whip these on high speed. Check for peaks. I would say we got some.
Mm-hmm.
When I pulled the beaters out, you can kind of look, those little peaks, they stayed. Can you see them?
They can't really respond.
I know, it's probably hard for you to see, but you could take a peek, see if you see it, zoom in, okay? I'm gonna put those aside for a little bit now, okay? Okay, so we've got our flour, and go ahead and then put in the baking powder, baking soda, and the salt. So that would be those three small.
I can't tell the difference.
Nope, it's okay. Perfect. All right, and then you are going to go ahead and just stir them together a little bit.
This?
Yep, perfect. All right, so after we get that in, what we're going to do, we are going to put a little bit of the flour mixture in, and then we're going to put some of our yogurt in. This recipe calls for some plain Greek yogurt. That's going to help keep the cake nice and moist. So we're going to put a little flour in, a little bit of yogurt, little flour, a little yogurt. I'll keep stirring.
Okay.
You want to do that part?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. It's a very thick batter. For those of you that have made cake before, definitely on the thicker side. But we still have to add our egg whites in. So now we need to fold these in. So, you know, the folding was the rolling motion.
Do you want me to do that?
Do you want to, or do you want me to?
You can do it.
Okay. So I'm going to fold these in. I'm going to use just my scraper here. That's nice and stiff. We did a good job getting those soft peaks. If you notice, it just kind of plopped right in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold this in until we don't see any more white streaks. So I don't want to like stir like this, or else that's going to kind of break apart our egg whites that we worked so hard to beat all that air in there.
So hard.
So hard. Okay, I guess we didn't work hard. The mixer did. But we're going to get this folded inside.
That looks better.
It does look better.
It looks more like cake.
It does look more like cake. It was very, very thick, so this is helping us get that in. We want to make sure that all the white stuff is beat in. And then we're going to take and put our raspberries in. Yes. And we're going to fold those in nicely too, because we don't want to break up the raspberries into like teeny tiny little crumbs. So, all right, do you want to mix or plop those in? No. Stir them. We lost one. All right, now we're using probably a little extra raspberry, but that's okay. We like raspberries here in this house.
I do, you don't.
You do. She's right, I don't. I would prefer strawberries, but that's okay. It's not my birthday. Okay. Perfect.
That looks really good.
It does look really good. Okay, so now we need to spray our baking pans so that we can get our cakes in the oven. So here's what our batter looks like, just so you can see. It's still not super runny like if you were making a cake mix, but it's definitely a lot thinner than it was just a couple of minutes. Okay.
Good to spray.
Yep, go ahead and spray. Make sure you get all the way around the edge.
Okay.
Yep, perfect. Now I'm using some silicone pans, which means as we work to, like, after the cake is done, it should be much simpler to get that out of the pan. You might see a little cloud of spray in the camera right now, and that's good.
Fog machine.
It's the fog machine. We have the birthday cake fog machine. Okay, so if you remember from reading back, don't breathe that. If you remember from reading the article, one of the things that it said to do to make sure that you're evenly spreading your batter between the two pans is to use an ice cream scoop. So this is what they're considering an ice cream scoop. I'm just using the biggest one I have. It holds about 3 tablespoons. And so we're just going to kind of take turns plopping our batter between the two.
It kind of looks like ice cream.
It kind of does. It does look like ice cream. Don't eat it though, it's raw. You could get sick.
I haven't gotten sick before.
I know. There's always the first time, though, Emily. Okay, so we'll get this in the pan. I lost track of where I was at. Not that I'm counting, but just. All right, and then we're gonna need to spread this out a little bit in the pan. So if you wanna take that other scraper, we'll work on spreading it out.
This is so good. I'm so excited.
Happy birthday, Emily. All right, we don't wanna miss any of that cake, so we'll scrape some out. Make sure we get it all right.
Did you put an even amount in?
I did. I'm gonna put one more scoop over in the green pan.
Yeah, I was like, it needs another scoop.
Yeah, she's keeping me on my toes, you guys. Making sure I'm doing it the right way. That's good. Since I don't have you guys tell me when I screw up, because you guys are good at that too. At least I have someone to kind of take your place.
Ouch.
No, not your place. They always tell me when I do stuff wrong. I guess you do too, don't you? That's half the fun. Okay.
Does that one look good?
That one looks pretty good, yeah. All right, so we got that spread.
This honestly looks like melted ice cream.
It does look like melted ice cream. I'm gonna kind of, my fingers are clean, so I'm going to just wipe off my scraper.
I've washed my hands more than you.
Have you?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so here's my pan.
The silicone does not really do much.
No, the silicone, it's floppy, okay? So I'm gonna be very careful when I put those in the oven. For sure.
Do they not melt?
No, they don't melt, they're silicone. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We are going to take and we're gonna put this in the oven. We're gonna put them both cakes on the same shelf is what the recipe says for about 25 minutes. Or until the center springs back when you touch it and the edges are just starting to turn golden. We want to make sure that we don't overbake this cake, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and put those in the oven and then we'll come back in a little bit after it's baked. All right, I just took the cakes out of the oven and if you'll notice, they're starting to brown just around the outside edges, which is what the recipe told us to do. If I were to take and poke it, notice how it kind of springs back. That's another sign that it's done. If we wanted to, we could even take a toothpick in the middle and pull it out. If it comes clean, then we know it's done as well. All right, so they're gonna sit here inside their pans for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, then we'll take and flip them out so that they can finish cooling before we chill them so we can frost it later. Okay, while my cakes are cooling over here on the cooling racks, I'm gonna go ahead and start making my frosting, all right? So I need 2 sticks of butter, also known as a cup of butter. So I'm gonna take and I'm gonna cream those. I got my KitchenAid mixer out this time, my stand mixer. And I'm gonna just put those in there. I'm gonna cream them without the sugar first so that we don't have like a powdered sugar volcano happening and we make a ginormous mess. Emily has decided to watch this part, so you get just me now from here on out. We are going to take and we are going to cream the butter just by itself, potentially. Almost forgot. I'm gonna put just a teeny tiny bit of yellow in here to give my frosting a little bit of a yellow color because we're gonna make it lemon flavored. But we wanna have it just be a little tinge of yellow other than just like butter colored yellow. So I'm gonna put that in with my butter and the powdered sugar. Okay, that helped. It creamed it together a little bit. So there's 2 sticks of butter, 5 cups of powdered sugar, which is almost like a whole 2-pound bag. And then I've got 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, which is gonna give it its flavor. And then hopefully with adding the liquid to it, it will help with some of that color and getting the color around, and it should make it nice and fluffy. So I'm gonna put the lemon juice in a little bit at a time. I feel like it needs a little bit more lemon juice, so I'm gonna go squeeze a little bit more lemon juice out. And then we'll add that in to make it a little bit fluffier. All right, one more check. Oh, that's so much better. I feel like that is more like the consistency that we want to have when we're talking about buttercream, which we'll discuss some more next week. But for now, this will do, so we can say that our frosting is done. In the meantime, I'm going to take and I am going to pop out my cakes out of the pan. Okay, the cakes have been cooling here for like 10 minutes, so I'm going to take and I'm going to carefully flip it upside down. I like to take and put my cooling rack on the top, and then because I have the silicone pans, it should just pop out, which it does. That looks glorious. We're going to do that one more time. Careful, because your pan is probably still hot on the bottom, which it is. And voila. Now we're gonna let them finish cooling all the way. Once they're cooled all the way, I'm gonna wrap them with some plastic wrap, and I'm gonna chill them for like an hour or two because it's so much easier to put frosting on a cake that's been chilled. All right, see you back in a bit. Okay, my cakes have been in the refrigerator chilling for about a couple of hours. Now I'm gonna get my place set up. And so here's a couple tricks that I like to use. I like to take some wax paper and I'll cut off a few strips like that. And I'm gonna just kind of put those around the outside of my cake platter, which I happen to have sitting on top of a turntable here, okay? And what I'm going to do is just use this to help keep my plate nice and clean, so that as I'm working, when I'm done, I can just kind of pull out the pieces of wax paper and it'll be nice and neat. All right, now these cakes ended up being pretty flat. So the nice part is I don't really have to do any kind of trimming with it. If I wanted to help make it be a little flatter, I can put the bottom of the cake on the top, and then it's nice and even for me. It doesn't really matter for the middle part because I'm going to fill it with some frosting. So I'm going to very carefully put that on there. Okay. And then I'm going to take some of our frosting here. I found an invert spatula here. This is what this is. So you notice it kind of like curves down at an angle. So we're going to use this. I'm going to kind of plop some frosting on. And then I'm going to use this guy to spread it. And this is our in-between layer, so it's okay if it's a little bit thicker. But I also need to make sure that I'm saving enough for the outside and the top of my cake. Now, as you can notice, the one tricky thing about using the wax paper is that it tends to get a little slippery. So you kind of have to hang on to things. And I might just choose to be neat if it gets too bothersome for me. All right, so I'm kind of taking it from the middle and I'm pushing it to the outside is how I'm working this. Okay, looks like I need a little bit more frosting, so I'll put some more on there. Get that spread. Again, we're just doing this to kind of get around to the outside. This layer doesn't have to be too neat because we're going to cover it up. The one thing you do want to make sure though is you want to make sure that it's kind of even all the way across the cake. So that's what I'm trying to work on at the moment. So we'll get that kind of even. Get it out to the edges because you will be putting some more on there to cover up that edge. You don't really want to have a hole poking through with your cake. So we'll do a little bit more. I like the yellow color that how my frosting turned out. I haven't tasted the lemon frosting yet. I'm sure it's very good. All right. Perfect. All right. By using this edge and kind of scraping it off of my bowl to get it clean, that's what's going to help me get that nice smooth surface to it. as I mentioned, this one not quite as big of a deal to get nice and smooth because we're just gonna put another cake on top. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead, open up my other cake. Now for this cake, I'm gonna put the actual top of the cake on top of the frosting here so that I have a nice flat side from when I did from the bottom of the cake pan. And I don't have to worry about doing any trimming. It's kind of a short cake to begin with. And so I don't really want to trim any of it off, even though it wouldn't be bad to eat probably, but just because otherwise I will lose some of the height of my cake. All right, so there we go. We have that on. Now we're gonna take and put some more frosting on, and we're gonna get that spread across the top of the cake. This is where we want to be a little bit neater. And then I'll show you a couple tools that you can use to help you get those sides nice and neat. So I'll work on this. You can watch me, and then we'll come back and take a peek at the sides. Okay, so I feel like we have those nice and covered. I'm going to take this, you can get these in metal, they're called a bench scraper. I'm going to actually use it. It came with like from a flour company to do some things. But if you kind of take this and you go across and you pull it away from the edges, that will kind of give you a nice crisp edge to your cake. And you can get that nice smooth surface on the top. And then you can kind of take and have it go along the sides. Oops, okay. Along the sides like this. And that will kind of help smooth out those edges as you go as well. Sometimes you'll have to kind of take and scrape it off a little bit, get that extra frosting out of there. And just kind of keep scraping it around. And again, that's to help make it be a little bit more even. It gives it a nice smooth surface to it. And kind of helps fill in any of those holes that you might have. And I'm going to kind of tag team it with both my inverted spatula and my scraper here. The key is to make sure that you're not pulling up any of your cake, because you don't want any cake pieces in on that. Well, hey, I think we did a pretty decent job. Now I'm not going to get into doing piping techniques and decorating this week. We'll do some of that next week. I'll get some fondant out. We'll play with some fondant. I can show you some piping techniques next week. For this week, I basically wanted you to focus on the cake and making a layer cake, how you put it together. If I was doing something like fondant, I would want to do a layer like this before I put my fondant on. This would be called my crumb coat. I wouldn't have to probably be as neat and precise with it. With it being a crumb coat, because it would be covered up. But for this particular cake here, I think we've done a pretty decent job. It looks nice and smooth for the most part. And it will be ready for me if I wanted to write Happy Birthday Emily on it or whatever else we want to do. So let me show you another quick thing. If I were to pull my pieces of wax paper off here, you should be able to see that it left, mine scooted a little bit, which is fine. But it leaves this nice little mark, or it makes it so there isn't a mark, is what I'm trying to say, on your serving dish for keeping your plate nice and neat. So there you go. We made a birthday cake, hooray! Maybe I'll cut it up and show you a piece of it tomorrow when it's her real birthday. All right, see you next week. Okay, now we have a little fishing expedition to go on because we got a little bit of egg inside our bowl, which is totally fine.
Should I just see?
So I'm gonna use a little fishing device,
A spoon.
a spoon.
There's another piece in there.
Yep,
Too.
and sometimes it's hard to get out. Oh, I got it on the first try. And takes quite concentration.
There's another piece. Do you see it?
Oh, I see it way down here.
Yeah.
Did I get it?
Nope. It's right there.
Oh, come back.
Nope. You don't have it.
I did have it.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, did I get it all now? Perfect.
We definitely.
What? All right.
I didn't. I wasn't listening.
Okay. So you're gonna put a little bit of flour in.
I
Not
know.
all
I
of
know.
it.
I heard
Oh,
that.
you heard that.
But
Okay.
is that it?
Yeah. So we're gonna go
Just
back and
go
forth.
back and
Yep.
forth. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, ready?
Yeah.
A little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
I'm right here.
I know.
I'm here in spirit.
Okay. Spirit it is. Okay, so